Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of Your Next 50, where we invite you to play big, to be intentional, and conquer those limiting and beliefs.
Troubling
Troubling. I had all these words in my mind, beliefs and stories
that
that
are
are
holding
holding you
you back.
back. They are.
Yeah.
I'm Sylvia.
And I'm Jenny. Welcome, everybody. And
We have such a
today,
great show,
oh,
Jenny.
we have such a great show. If you've just trying to decide which podcast to listen to, stay here. Give us 2 minutes. You'll be hooked for the whole thing, I promise. It's about the idea of dimming your light and when we dim and when we don't, and how this serves no one. Right,
Yeah,
Sylvia?
we talk a lot about
Mhm.
showing up powerfully, using your voice, and I see
Mhm.
a large light there, when we
Yeah.
talk about these things. But it's true, like we're taking this in a different angle. So you're going to notice we're going to give you examples today of what that might look like in your life when we're dimming the light. And Jenny and I were talking about that actual like picture a dimmer, a light switch in your house, in your
Mhm.
room, in your office, and dimming. And I shared with Jenny that I was at my parents' house for dinner this past weekend for Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
and they have a light with a dimmer. And it was I guess halfway, and it was kind of flickering, and so then we
Mhm.
turned it up, but then it was so bright. It was just too bright, and everyone was like,
And you were
blinded by the
distracted.
light. And we were distracted by it. We couldn't really talk. Someone was like, it's in my eyes.
Yeah.
And then so we moved it down a little bit, and then it started still flickering. And that was bothersome for some people, but
Uh-huh.
not for others. It didn't bother my mom, but bothered my spouse. Then we turned it too low, but then we couldn't really see because it was just this whole, what a great story to start our show today. Because
Mhm.
if you're, when you're listening to this,
Mhm.
where is your setting on
Oh,
your own personal dimmer?
so
Mm,
if you're listening, quick check in, check with your gut right now. Think of your friends and your buddies. Where's your dimmer switch? Think of
mm.
your work. Think of your last business meeting. Where's your dimmer switch? And then think about at home with your family or whoever your partner or whatever. Where's your dimmer switch? Now, I'm going to guess, Sylvia, for our listeners, that those three switches are different. They're
I
not
think they can
necessarily.
be. They're not necessarily the same. And
Yeah,
I was trying to think,
yeah,
for many years, I,
yeah,
I I had my dimmer switch really low,
yeah.
right? And we talk about hiding all the time. And with
Mhm.
other groups, with our group of friends, my switch is always full blast. At one point, my husband said, "We noticed you on your call on the weekend, Sylvia, just a couple of hours ago, that you do a lot of talking in that group. Who are you with?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm with my friends." But then the next time I got on the call, I remembered that,
Yeah,
and I put my switch lower.
yeah.
Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Mm,
You had said, shouldn't our switch always be
mm,
on the same level?
mhm.
Shouldn't we be ourselves all the time?
So the thing that I started thinking about was how I adjust with new people rather than old
Mm.
familiar people. I think I tend to dim my switch back with new people, hold myself back, and because of this, I had a meeting yesterday. I'm presenting on a really cool event coming up in November and I was with these keynote speakers, and I was so totally jazzed to meet them all. And I realized I was talking a lot. I was really excited, and then afterwards, when I was connecting on LinkedIn, I was like, so sorry, I'm the keener in the group. If you couldn't tell, I'm just really excited to meet you. But, it felt very authentic for me, Sylvia.
Mm.
And I think it's because we've been doing all these conversations about owning your voice and trust your voice. And you have your So Confident Visibility community, and the coaching that I've invested in, the coaching I've been working on myself and with clients is I need to talk the talk. I need to show up authentically when I'm in those
Mhm.
meetings. And that
Mhm.
was very genuine and it was completely appropriate in that moment with those people.
It brings me back to our photo shoot. If you
Mm,
haven't caught that episode, a couple episodes ago, and we were being quite silly.
mm.
And at one point, the question came up, who's funnier? And I think you asked, or no, I don't know
I
if the
think the
photographer,
photographer.
Talia, who is funnier? And I right away blurted, well, I am. like, and I felt kind of bad afterwards. Like,
Yeah.
but you know what? I forgot in that moment
Uh,
how silly you
Uh-huh.
can be.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, but that doesn't show up on the podcast as
No.
much. I said, my humor, I think, comes out a lot.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I maybe try and dim it a little bit because
mhm,
I can just be quite out there and just
mhm.
say what I want to say. And sometimes I feel, oh my God, is that resonating with anybody? And then you said, well, in this situation, I am being more professional.
Or
So,
your foil, right? Like, I'm a little bit of your
right.
foil in the dynamics, and
Mm.
that's really funny 'cause
Because you are a very silly person at like some of those pictures, like we were on the floor and hiding, you were, and not everybody sees that. So I think when you
Yeah,
are that talkative and you
yeah,
will, you
yeah.
that part of you comes out, and
That's
I
interesting.
see that in myself too. When I'm
Yeah.
at one point I thought I should really tone the funniness, the
Mm,
jokes down a little bit. I
mhm,
should really do that. And then like right
mhm,
away, I'm like, there was a little light in my mind that said,
mm.
no, Sylvia, that's part of who you are. That's your
Yeah,
I'm doing a lot of work on how are, magnet, where who's magnetic? Who in
mm,
my network do I find so magnetic and I'm attracted to their
mm.
energy? And that I find that is their being their true selves.
Yeah,
I
I don't think they turn it on, right? Like, for those of
no,
you that know us, like, this is us pretty much. I
pretty much.
mean,
Yeah.
we are pretty active, and you're right about the magnetism. It's not because it's an act, it's because it's
No.
genuinely who they are, and they
You
just
can't
hook
put an
into it.
active magnet. You can't be magnetized. It's not easy, but I don't think you can put that
Yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah,
and put that personality on and take it off. I think you just are. People are
yeah.
attracted to you, and when you show up so real.
And every single one of you that's listening, you have this ability. Those of you, the introverts on the group, they're going, well, that's just not like me.
Mm,
Please know that an introvert in a personal, meaningful conversation, by the choice of their words, completely captures the room. I know you always see the big noisy people in the room, but absolutely they can be transformational and really really touch people, which is really what this podcast
mm,
is about, is about the journey of what we're on our next 50, how we want to show up powerfully, what we want to accomplish and what we want to, I was thinking of the intention word, Sylvia, our intentions for the next 50. And
mm,
I wanted to go to a quote that's been rumbling around in my brain. And I wanted to make sure I said the whole thing on this podcast because it's been driving me this week. It's from Nelson Mandela. And if you're not a God person, just add in the word universe instead. But listen to this quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. We
mm.
ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and famous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make and manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of it, it is in all of us. And when we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's
Liberation,
beautiful.
light,
Yeah,
letting go of
power.
fear, power, so this idea of dimming your light, like, so how do we take those first steps? How do we start? Well, first step is always awareness, right?
Mm. Well, let's delve into, how are ways that we are dimming our lights. We talked a little bit, if you can see that dimmer, can see it going down in a certain situation. Let's say at a job, I remember being spoken to by bosses that, or perhaps condescending. I totally dimmed it there. Rather than standing up for myself,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I I just felt that I was turning
yeah,
inwards and I was like a
yeah,
5-year-old all over
yeah.
again being, admonished by
Mhm,
my parents, rather than stepping into that power and let's say, "Well, let's talk about this. I don't have that same point of view."
Or
Yeah.
even, I feel that's inaccurate. Can we discuss that? Right?
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't, I guess that's that whole conflict piece that we're taught to step away from as well. I know in my world, the place I start to dim is when I hear other people's introductions. They went to
Mm.
Harvard. They went to whatever. I'm like, oh, who am I, right? And then the little inner critic, if you didn't see our inner critic one, Phyllis gets involved with her glasses and she starts telling me and then I start doubting what I'm supposed to say. How do I introduce myself? I could do it in a million ways. That happened very recently for me. And it's funny because I'm
Mm.
a person with a lot of degrees, just in case you didn't know. I'm really good at being in
Yeah, for
school.
you to say that, yeah, they've got more and you don't. You've got a lot of them, Jenny. You
I
got you
know.
up to your
Yeah.
PhD.
I know.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's a common what we see that with women often is that
Mhm.
I don't feel adequate, and that
Mhm.
goes, that just comes up all the time. And so, when we're taking course after course after
Mhm.
course, rather than taking the course and then implementing it,
Mhm.
oh, I need another course. And I found myself saying that to my husband the other day. Maybe I need another certification.
Yeah.
Am I good? Am I good enough coach? Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's like, stop it, Sylvia. Enough.
Yeah.
You have enough courses.
I had this
Mhm.
analogy too of not trusting our guts, Sylvia. So think of that
Mm.
light. I'm old school. It's plugged into the wall. So it plugs right into your intuition. And the minute you're not sure, that light unplugs and you
Mhm.
dim. You immediately dim away. Oh, I'm not sure, right? Not trusting yourself is another way that your light gets dimmed, for sure.
Oh, and that's a big one, isn't it? But particularly when we're, up leveling.
Mm,
And if I speak, for some of my clients, not speak for them, but speak to them. If we're up leveling our businesses
yeah,
and we do want to, invest in ourselves, like we were
yeah,
talking about our coaches
yeah.
and coaching programs, and whoa, when
Uh-huh.
you start to feel goosebumps when the price comes up, and oh my gosh, that's a big investment. Well, do I trust myself
Yeah,
to make it worthwhile? And will I
yeah.
get everything? And then that's really about ourselves. It's not about the coach. Is the coach good enough? No. I will get out of a program what I put into it.
Yeah.
And so
I'm
we
really
don't trust
excited.
ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have coming up a special guest talking about all in. And even just saying the words all in, I'm giving you a sneak
Mm.
teaser, folks, starts me really thinking about, am I all in? Am I all in on that nutrition program? Am I all in on this podcast, Sylvia? Am I all in the evenings with my family? And it's really kind of got me thinking about how it's so easy to hedge our bets, to dim our light, make sure we fit in, have a good life. And that's great if that's what you want, right? I want to be
Mm.
clear. But if there's something burning, we talk about playing big all the time on this show. And gosh, I don't know about you, but I come off these calls, I'm like, okay, I got to do something bold. I got to do a power move. I got to do something powerful because we've just talked about this. I get totally juiced listening to these calls, Sylvia, to be part of them.
I think that, and that can be scary for some people when we talk
Yeah.
about play big,
Yeah.
all in. And what we're not saying, and I want that to be quite clear,
Yeah.
is not to have the balance, is not to have balance. We want you to have balance. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a give and take, right? We put everything in that we have into a project, but
Yeah.
then when the project is done, we do need time for some clearing, some grounding,
Mm,
some rest, some recharge. Until then we go back in, right?
mm,
But it's choosing in those moments to be fully present. And what does that look for you? That, and that conversation is going to be excellent with,
mm,
when we talk in that episode about being
mhm.
all in, but it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
Because I find I'm feeling a little choking here when we talk
Mm.
about go all in.
You're
We both have
resisting.
launches. Well, we both have launches at the moment. And
Yeah.
I wrote on my paper, I'm all in on this one.
Mm.
But I also put with ease and flow.
Sure.
I do not want
Yeah.
it to be all encompassing and turn
Right.
it into a burnout. That will serve
Mm.
nobody. So how
Mhm.
can I be all in? What does that mean for me in my launch, right?
Well, and yeah, and so the aha for me is coming around. This is such an interesting conversation that it's, those of you that are working these crazy hours in their jobs, the
Mm,
to-do list seems like the all in, but maybe it's the intention towards the goal that's the all in. Can we be mindset wise all in? Like, and how would that look and feel? And that whole beautiful coaching question of, what would future Jenny do? I ask myself that a
mm,
lot. If this is where I want to go, what would future Jenny do to make that happen? But there's so many places where, showing up. I mean, women in particular, whether it's visually, we talked, was it last week about, hiding, and how often we hide, whether it's photos, whether it's words,
Mm.
that doesn't really serve you, but it also doesn't serve the people around you either. And so the other thing that we dim our light is I can find myself dimming my light, to not take up too much space in a conversation, or taking a back seat was the way you talked about it. Yeah, letting others talk. Do you do that, Sylvia? I know I do.
Well, yeah, it's like my husband said that when I got off the call with my group. Gosh, you talked a lot. But I find in certain groups that, that just
Mhm.
with those people I did. And then I find I am in another group of business women, and I tend to let them all talk. They seem to have lots that they want to say. And
Mhm.
I don't like it to be
Mhm.
it's not a shouting match. It's a
Mhm.
and luckily in that group we all
Mhm.
they notice, and they
Mhm.
will, Sylvia, you haven't been talking. But I think the intention there is not to not show up,
Mhm.
but I am letting the other, they seem,
Mhm.
in certain situations. And then there are
Mhm.
such so everything really depends, like we said at the beginning of the show. Who are
Yeah.
we with? What's the situation like? Where can I serve best? I don't want to talk just for talking. So I
Well,
think as big person, you often say we both have big personalities. I think there are moments where it's okay
yeah.
to have the soft light on, but intentionally,
Intentionally. And I
intentionally.
think too, like as I think about equity, inclusion, and diversity, which are such important conversations that we're all having, whether it's at home or at work or in our volunteer roles, the role of a great facilitator to pull out and
Mm.
invite people to participate and make them feel comfortable. And I'm reading this amazing book called The Truth About Trust. That creating that space, it's easy to gloss over that and just say we need to hear everybody's voices, but we also need to create the crucible or the space so that everybody can listen as well. And so I think that intention of, am I dimming my light to make everyone included, or am I dimming my light to hide?
Yes, exactly. Is like,
Just,
when you have things in your mind that you say, oh, I would say this, but I'm
yeah,
just not going to say anything.
yeah,
Oh, I'm not going to bother.
yeah,
I'm not going to open up that can of worms. You just know it's going to start a big conversation that you don't want to get into. Again, intentionally, sometimes you
mm,
won't want to start
mm,
those conversations.
mhm,
But other times, I think there are really important times
yeah.
where it would serve you to do so. Mm.
This is tying in for me around leadership as well. So, in
Oh,
my
yes.
world as an executive coach, making those decisions as a leader, what to say, what to do, what to lean into, what not to. You can plan as much as you want before the meeting, but you're in the moment, right? And I can think of a situation where I was a chair of something, and you could see from the conversation, we were about to go down a rabbit hole, right? And I remember as the leader thinking, well, first thought was, oh, I hope somebody doesn't take us there. And then, oh, we're going there. And then, oh, I guess I better do something as the leader. And I checked in with myself because I'm a big believer in letting people's voices be heard. And I thought, is this going to serve this group, this discussion, this time? And I was like, no, it's not. And so I actually stepped in and said, can we take this offline? Can we move this over in the good of the whole group? This isn't a topic that I want to discuss now. Um,
Mhm.
Leadership is about making decisions and being clear. And I'd like to think that I did it respectfully and honestly in a way that honored the voice, but still respected what the group and the consensus was. So not turning off his light, but inviting that person to open up a light in another place too. Ooh, we're getting so many good analogies here.
We are. Today is all about that. And my analogy is like I'm envisioning myself around the table as that leader.
Yeah,
We've talked a lot about inviting those who do
yeah,
not speak. Then
yeah,
I think comes again a very important aspect
yeah,
of leading around the table. But also there are people whose lights are always on and who shine that, right. We had talked about that on the call, just prior to the call. Meeting someone perhaps whose light is overbearing, at like the light at my dinner table, just overbearing. And all
yeah,
these judgments come up, and
yeah.
we're making judgments about them. And they're not necessarily true either.
No,
And so that's more of a reflection
mhm,
of us, perhaps, where we see ourselves in
mm,
certain people, don't we? But we
mm.
also judge them but we're actually judging ourselves.
Well, there's a term, I'm going to get it wrong, but the shadow personality, right? That we all have
Mm.
shadow personalities. That's a great example. That person that's talking too much for me in a board meeting or in an executive meeting, what is that saying about me? Why am I pissed off about that, right? So rather than the judge or learner would be, why is that person so annoying versus how is that person feeling? Right? Like that
Mm.
shift from judger to learner. And it's in a moment's time, right? And I find as, working at the executive level, that self-awareness piece is so powerful. And if you're an entrepreneur listening, knowing where your blind spots are around when you're dimming your light or when you're shining too bright, I can actually envision like a pitch situation with a really keen entrepreneur and kind of going full blown, like that analogy you had of the dining room table with your parents being so bright that nobody can listen. On a simple level, it might be talking too fast. It might be sending too much information, not having curated what you want to say. I think a test drive, right? A test drive would be a great example. And that whole thing really comes down to practice, accepting that you're going to adjust these lights and you're going to play with it. So, Sylvia, maybe one of the takeaways for our listeners is the next meeting you're in, the next place you're around a table or work-wise or home-wise, notice, just check in. Ooh, where's my dimmer right now? Am I at a 10 out of 10? Am I 5 out of 10? Where do I want to be?
Yeah, and again, it's not always, we don't always need, it doesn't always need to be on the 10. 10s,
Mm,
I don't think so, but it's
mm,
intentional. Where am I going to put the dimmer?
mm.
Yes, and I've been on coaching calls, and I guess it depends what you do in life, but
Yeah, yeah.
as a business owner, I'm very aware of when I'm writing and speaking, and I've seen that in other coaches where it's all about them and their stories,
Mm,
and sometimes we like to relate to others through
mm,
stories, and I tend to do that, and I was like, oh,
mm,
I have to be careful, like. It
mhm,
just it was just an
mhm,
awareness piece for me and being very intentional. Like, when I'm writing my copy, it's not all about, like right now in a launch, it's not about my program and I can do this for you and I can do this. It's really all about them.
mhm.
So part of that is allowing to shine the light on others,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, nice.
So I think that's right.
That's the
It's not
flashlight, right?
shining it on us all the time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
shining it on others, and that makes a very powerful coach, I believe.
I
And
agree.
we have
I
both worked
agree.
with powerful coaches before who make you like really
Uh-huh.
feel that the light is on you.
Well, and it's funny when that light's on you, you are accountable to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I know one of the phrases I use a lot in coaching is, and what they say is, when you're in a coaching situation, the things that are happening in the coachee's life usually reflect and happen in the coaching situation. So often one of
Yeah.
the things I'm often doing is saying, I noticed that, blah, 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 because they may not have noticed that. And then the awareness comes on and immediately they can make a choice on where they want their light. Right. So
Mm.
I'm loving this light analogy. I maybe the last thing I would throw in before we kind of close out is this idea of being nice versus being interesting. I think sometimes we think we need to
Mm.
dim our light to be nice. And you talked about my quirky side, which I definitely have one. Oh,
Sorry, that's me.
time, and how that quirkiness is part of like who I am and what makes me memorable, but also like that's the way my brain works, Sylvia. I do the strangest associations. Anybody who knows me, I can go from A to B. It drives my family nuts, but that's also a beautiful gift that I have. So leaning into those being interesting, being okay with saying something a little bit unusual, because sometimes in a group we need someone to help us think outside the box, and that is a special gift. So
Yeah, and I've been there too, Jenny, and I get that. I remember being in a group and not saying anything for a long time, and then every time I seem to open my mouth with that particular group, I just say the weirdest things, and I just get off the call going, God, they must just think I'm like wacko woo woo woman here.
yeah.
And then I'm speaking to the woman who runs the group. She goes, "No, I loved it that you were
Yeah.
like just let it out, and
Mm,
maybe that'll resonate with some people." Like, well, that's just who I am,
yep.
and feeling comfortable.
Mm,
And we talk a lot about creating safe spaces. I'm not always comfortable letting that true side out,
Mm,
and I guess testing the waters. But
mm.
when I get off a call and think, oh my God, they think I'm nuts. But in other groups, that's just they know who I am, right?
Sure.
So it's I think we also dim, just depending again
Mhm.
who we're around and where
Mm.
we feel safe.
Yeah.
And
Well,
going back to that leadership, making our rooms and our tables
yes.
like safe
Oh,
places. And we talk about that on our workshop as well, like creating that safe
yeah.
space where people can show their quirkiness and show that they're different and show who they really are.
Hey, speaking of quirkiness, as we're closing out, there's a big announcement coming for everybody in November.
Mm,
We're going to be bringing more quirky, and I'm just going to leave it as a teaser that we will be
yes.
introducing someone who will be an interesting and really integral part of the Your Next 50 brand, our very first sponsor. I'm going to hold myself there in excitement.
That's right.
More coming up later. As we close out today, Sylvie, you've got a couple things that I think you want to highlight today as well. We wouldn't want you to dim your light.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, yes. By the time you are listening to this, my So Confident community will have launched, and it is a
Exciting.
place where women can come together and feel safe to
Yeah.
test things out, to test pitches, to create that
Mhm.
confidence, to go live and practice,
Mhm.
and really have that support group in that community setting. I see it as coming together weekly and books and
Mm.
discussions and happy hours. Really a lot of fun. It's
It's
I think
Sylvia time.
it is. I think we're going to have a lot of fun there. So like,
Mm.
if you are interested in that, please come and visit. We'll put the website in the notes, as well as you, Jenny. What do you have
Yes.
going on?
Well, by the time you hear this, I will have closed registration for the Uplift Leadership Program, but I am
Mm,
also going to be running some more money mindset programs. This is my passion. This is where I believe I can shine some light and help some people, what do we say? Uncover or let go of those limiting stories that may be holding you back from success. We talk a lot about money on this show, but whether you're a fundraiser, you're a sales representative, you're an engineer, you're a business leader, getting comfortable with money and what money represents
mm,
and all the emotions we attach to money
so
is part of
many.
the money mindset program that I'm running these days.
Love
So,
it. Well, lots of opportunities for you. You can catch us every week on Wednesdays on your favorite podcast player. Uh, I'm thinking of next week.
well, we
Do
can't
we
tell
know?
that one
We
because it's
can't say
very
that one.
exciting, but we
Okay,
can't say
that's when
anything.
it's going to be. Okay,
So,
well, I won't
Sylvia,
say anything.
I would just like to say this is next week will be episode
Mm,
60, which I also think is
60
pretty incredible. And so here's my cheers, my coffee cup cheers to us.
celebration to you, my
Yeah,
friend.
a moment
Yes,
to
cheers.
shine the work that we've done, the community we've built. All of you that have been listening, please know we value you, we appreciate you, we care about you, and we hope that these sort of co-coaching sessions that Sylvia and I do with each other are as rewarding and inspiring for you as they certainly are for us.
And if you are enjoying them, please, please, please go give it a
Mhm,
review if you can on Apple. Give us a 5-star review. Say, write a few words and share it
mhm.
with your friends, because the more women
Yep.
who can be impacted by these episodes that we share from the heart, I
Yeah.
think the world will just be a better place.
Shine
Um,
your light.
Shine your light. I like that. Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we're going to catch you next week for our surprise.
Bye.
Bye.